myself, I'm Rob Durscki from Stellar Development Foundation, and I think an interesting angle is how I got into crypto. So I did my MBA in 2015, and I remember there was a group of folks working on the innovation of financial services at that time, and between a few meetings with the Financial Technology Club and the first year of MBA, I was next year working with Deloitte Canada about corporate use cases for blockchain, and one thing led to another. 2018, I was already in a Canadian stablecoin issuer, Stablecorp. Stellar was one of its partners and initial chains of choice, and you look around, and I was working at Stellar, and it's been there since 2020. So that's my crypto background, which is now ramping up to 10 years. Going further back in time, I actually have a background in technology, but never exercised that too much. Did a few years of development and product management, and clearly realized I was not very good at it, and went to the financial services product and technology side. So first at Citi, I stayed there for a good 3 years, and then I started working with Rabobank in Brazil, which I stayed the longest, and there's kind of where I got exposed to the whole financial services ecosystem. So regarding Stellar, I knew about it just as part of my overall crypto knowledge when I was starting in the industry, but it really, I think, clicked when working at Canada Stablecorp. We were issuing the first regulated stablecoin, and obviously we had to go through the process of picking a chain. Ethereum, as to most, I think, issuers of any kind of asset, it was kind of a no-brainer at that time because the user base was just there. There was no Solana, there was no other, I think, chain that people were talking about. And Stellar had that consistent presence on payments and cross-border, and we said that might be a good move, and we connected with the foundation, and maybe two things. One, and I'm glad to say that regardless being on Stellar or not, like really very great people. So everyone I met was super friendly at that time and wanted to help us regardless if we worked with Stellar or not. And secondly is how smooth the tech was. And that's probably protocol version 16, and we're at 23 now. So a lot has changed. But at that time, the issuance experience on Stellar compared to the other chains we issue, and I don't want to badmouth any other chain except the obvious one, which is ERC20 on Ethereum, was just nonsensically easier. And then as I kept on learning about the features, the decentralized exchanges, the wallets, the price of the gas fees, the footprint, it just came to me clear and clear that if there was a path, at that time I was only thinking about stablecoins. Now we're talking about RWA more broadly here, but Stellar had, and I still think it has, the best tech stack and cost and risk ratio for regulated asset. I think Stellar has been very consistent since 2014 or 15 when that vision was drafted, which is equitable access to financial systems. And I think the idea underneath it is that there are systems offering different financial services. So there are apps, there are ATMs, there are clearinghouses, core banking systems. The idea is that how can we make those services more accessible both to the developers, the companies building it, fintechs and the likes, and ultimately, and that's the end goal, to the end user, right? Because we still talk about the same pain points, which is how expensive and slow it is to make cross-border payments, to make remittances, to raise funds and other like financial use cases, right? So that was kind of the underlying logic of how Stellar was built, and I think there's an analogy. I don't know if there is in English, but back in Brazil, it's like you aimed at an animal and you ended up hitting another animal, which in the sense we aimed at this payment peer-to-peer use case, and for that to be easy to use, we had to build a protocol that enables easy issuance of asset, easy trading, and easy payment. And when we look at this is exactly what the RWA industry needs, right? So it was under that same mission and infrastructure, we created a stack that actually fits as nice or even more nicely into the current RWA challenges. So yeah, so I think we're fulfilling that mission through what we've done already with wallets, aid, remittance, but also now through allowing people to issue and distribute assets in a more efficient way. Yeah. I think the growth on Stellar in any industry would be impressive. Maybe on crypto, you certainly would find other chains and companies with numbers that are more, I think, impressive. But what is nice on our side is the consistency of that growth. So I think we have a year-over-year growth of users on the 20+%, and from an AUM perspective, I think it's closer to 30%, reaching, I think we're south of $1 billion in AUM right now. But what's mostly interesting on Stellar is that, for example, I told this circle a couple of times, we're certainly not the number one in AUM, and a lot of that is that there's not a lot TVL on DeFi yet, because we're fairly new to that space. But on the flip side, each USDC on Stellar change hands over 20 times a year. And if you look more broadly, since Circle started issuing on Stellar, we have a volume versus AUM, which is 40 times. So if you take total AUM of USDC on Stellar, it did more than 40 times that AUM in total volume. So the AUM is on the hundreds of millions, and you would have volumes of the dozens of billions, right? So I think in that sense, we're fulfilling pretty much the mission of being the choice for payment, the choice for wallets, the choice for ramps. And that is, I think, the competitive advantage to expand the asset portfolio to securities and commodities and regulated assets. But also, as DeFi grows on Stellar, to understand that it's probably the easiest chain for you to on-ramp with cash or a bank deposit, and the same day you're trading on DeFi, right? So yeah, on a user base, we just surpassed 10 million addresses, which is an important number for us. Yeah, I think those are the two numbers that I'm tracking more closely. Yeah. So happy to be here at TokenizeThis version 2. The first one in Miami already impressed me enough that being the first event from a startup, it was able to attract, former SEC regulators, CFTC, banks, layer ones. I remember my panel was an interesting one with almost all the big layer ones at the time. And this year, moving to New York seems to be a wise decision, as you are able to attract even more of the Wall Street and other players in the industry. And yeah, I just want the streak to keep going, and I'm impressed with the profile, and yeah, you guys are doing a great job.